Wonderful. Ohayo gozaimasu. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues. It's wonderful to be here back in Tokyo and welcome you to this session focusing on sustainable investing and outcomes. I'm Gavin Power of PIMCO, formerly of the UN. It's my pleasure to moderate this fantastic group of experts today. To wit, from my immediate right, Claudia Kruse, Managing Director, Responsible Investment, EPG Asset Management. Arima-san, Senior Official, World Bank Treasury. And Sogano-san, Chief Sustainability Officer, Dai-Ichi. Welcome, dear panelists. To set the stage for our discussion, please allow me just a few overarching points, if I may. First, our focus today will be on practical ways to advance commercial investing strategies that are designed to contribute to positive real-world outcomes related to frameworks and objectives such as the SDGs. I'm just here from the UN SDG Summit in New York 2 weeks ago. And sadly, we're far off course in terms of the SDGs. Only 15% of the SDGs are on track. And we have less than 3,000 days to deadline, which is fairly alarming when you consider that. This said, let's please consider that sustainable development as an agenda supersedes the 2030 goals and is indeed a long-term, even forever agenda, in my opinion, multi-generational, no doubt. The UN GSD Alliance and Investor Group launched by the Secretary General has offered a definition of sustainable development investing. I encourage everyone to study this definition. Related, we're seeing new and exciting areas in terms of public-private co-investing strategies, metrics and impact measurement, SD taxonomies, I think we'll hear more about that in a bit, and new innovations such as sustainability bonds. The UN Global Compact has even launched a CFO coalition for the SDGs on corporate finance and investment. So this all said, we must also be mindful of mismatches between short-term tendencies of the markets and this long-term agenda that we're speaking about, while recognizing that outcomes investing varies across asset classes and across geographies and may not be suitable for all investors, whether we're talking about public markets or private markets indeed. So with these brief comments, let's get into the discussion. May I turn to you, Claudia?
Yeah, thank you very much. And good morning, everybody. I think that's quite a commitment on the third day of the conference. So delighted to see you all. And my name is Claudia Kruse. I work for APG, and it could just be, I might briefly introduce who we are. We are a fiduciary manager for Dutch pension funds. So we only manage money for pension funds, and we are also owned by them, and therefore having a very long-term horizon. We are invested globally, 550 billion, also with a strong exposure to Asia, and all sort of other regions in the world. And our clients are very committed to being responsible and sustainable investors. And when the SDGs were published in 2015, they wanted us to set an ambition of being invested into the SDGs. So at the time, we had to figure out how can we translate the SDGs targeted at policymakers into a language that works for investors. Mm-hmm. And that became the so-called SDI taxonomy. And we then set up an initiative called the Asset Owner Platform for investing into the SDGs with global peers. And that's what I thought I could briefly introduce. So it is PGGM from the Netherlands, and then it is Australian Super, and it is British Columbia from Canada. So the idea being, you would like to have a global approach, and you would like to find a standardized approach for allowing investors to identify, and if they so want to, steer on investing into the SDGs. And we are conservative by nature. as a pension fund. So when you talk about outcomes, that is already quite a strong language. And one could also look at, we want to make a contribution to investing into solutions that help address the sustainable development challenges. Or if you look purely from the financial side of things, we want to have another dimension to the analysis of our investments. To what extent are they aligned with the mega trends that we see in the market through their core business? Do they offer the kind of products and services that will be in demand as we're addressing climate change, as we're addressing the environmental but also social aspects?
Thank you, Claudia. Arima-san, perhaps a direct question to you, if I may. And that is, it seems clear that to produce lasting outcomes, public authorities, development banks, and private finance will need to collaborate as never before, especially in emerging and frontier markets, and including least developed countries, where the SDGs, the needs are so great. Can you talk a little bit about the World Bank's development bond framework?
Yes. So before I start, thank you for your time, and it's a great opportunity for me to speak in such a nice event. So thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm working for the World Bank Treasury, and my main job is to borrow money from investors. Therefore, I speak from the viewpoint of the borrower. You're an investor, and you are an investor, so I think it's nicely balanced.
Yeah.
So. And you mentioned about the framework, and
Yes.
Our sustainable development bond framework is very important instrument when we communicate with investors. So in the past, I think we all agree that when investors make a decision for buying bonds, they look at the financial return. And the how big is the face amount for the liquidity purpose, then the credit quality. But nowadays, investors are looking to more on a use of proceeds, right? So, and we draft the framework for the main purpose, communicating with investors how to explain how we use the money we borrow from the global investor base. So in that respect, it's very important. And also, in addition to, of course, the financial statements, the impact report is so important when we communicate with investors. So, and one important point is that the World Bank is an international organization established for the purpose of helping developing countries. So, in this regard, we promote ourselves that our entire balance sheet is used for the social purpose. Therefore, all of the World Bank bonds outstanding in the market must be eligible for ESG investments. That's how we promote our bond. And our hope is that all of the investors on this planet agree on that point.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Turning to you, Sogano-san, in reading Dai-Ichi's Responsible Investment Report, I was particularly struck by your commitment to stewardship and the following statement. As a universal owner, we promote RI that has an ESG investment and stewardship activities component to solve social issues. Can you comment a bit?
Yeah, thank you, Gavin. And good morning, everyone here. And yeah, it's my great pleasure to be here. And answering to the Gavin's questions, first of all, our stance on responsible investment activities is very clear. ESG investment and the financing and stewardship activities go hand in hand. So when investing and financing, we strive to create a positive impact towards the realization of the sustainability society in the future. To this end, we are actively promoting investment and that contribute to solving social issues, including SDGs. It is very important to accumulate investment amounts, but also it is even more important to expand the positive impact created by investments. So against this background, our medium-term policy for the responsible investment announced last year sets not only investment and loan amounts, but also the impact targets. And in addition, our company is a universal owner, as Gavin has introduced me, that owns a variety of assets and conducts various investments, and such as stock investment, bond investment, loans and facilities, and project finance. And we aim to find the optimal engagement method for each asset class, since engagement approaches differ depending on the assets. Just for example, in stock investment, we are conducting impact investments mainly in venture companies. When making an investment, we meet with the company's management, like CEOs, CFOs, CSUs, and whatever, in advance to confirm whether they are willing to contribute to social solutions. We decide the impact KPIs, which are agreed upon with management. We believe that going through this process will increase the probability of creating a positive impact.
Mhm.
This is what we call real engagement. Of course, even for the companies that do not have impact investment targets, we support the realization of increased corporate value by sharing the company's ESG challenges through dialogues with investee companies and mutually confirming the progress on the issues. Let me stop here.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Maybe to press the point a bit, in assessing your investment and borrowing strategies, what challenges have you encountered, and what are the levers of change that you're utilizing?
Oh, there are so many challenges here because for the SDGs matters, I have mentioned just now about just take an example of the climate change issues. But for talking about the SDGs, which covers more wide, there is still no good solution and as to how to quantify the impact of various SDGs investments and what are the appropriate indicators. Those are those kinds of questions. Those are the discussions which we are focusing for now on.
Very good. Claudia, same question to you on challenges and levels of change.
Exactly. I think, this question of quantifying the impact, of finding, you have the Global Impact Investing Network who has defined metrics, but actually they are not the how. The models, the underlying models are yet to be developed. So I think it's that making that step to quantification and doing it in a manner that is rigorous and credible is actually, I would say, a collective challenge that we should address.
Mm-hmm. Arima-san?
Yes. In short, what we are focusing now is something beyond green bonds.
Mhm.
So that's one of our kind of the way to how we tackle the capital markets demand. So of course, we introduced the green bond concept into the market with drafting the green bond principle and so forth, and
Yes.
working together with ICMA. But now we are feeling that the only green bond, the green bond only would be difficult to resolve the global issues. And what we are doing right now is that try to mainstream climate finance to the entire balance sheet. That's what we are doing right now. And in fact, we scanned 100% of projects every year recently. And in average, 90% projects with respect to numbers have some points to tackle the climate issues. And with respect to the volume, 38% of the entire balance sheet is already tackling the climate issues. So that's in general, when we issue green bonds, we look into the balance sheet, our lending portfolio, and choose typical green project eligible for the green bond. However, only with such kind of way, we feel it's very difficult to achieve the target. So we, of course, continue at such classical way of ring fencing green project, but in addition, we look into the entire balance sheet to expand.
I was fascinated to read about the outcome bond examples in relation to conservation.
Oh, can I talk about that?
Please, yes, if you would.
So, yeah, the most recent outcome bond is the emission link bond issued for the Vietnam. But I would like to introduce here the UNICEF bond, what we call, and 99% of the bond actually purchased by Sogano, Dai-Ichi Life. Yeah,
Not me.
So, and the structure is so unique. When the COVID started, UNICEF came to us, and they want to expand the donation business in some the middle income countries. However, the traditional way to get donation is face-to-face meetings, but they cannot do that under the COVID. So, and they are forced to invest in IT solutions, which will enable them people to donate over the iPhones and the cell phones. However, the nature of UNICEF is to try to pass on the money donated as much as possible to the children in the developing countries. So that's their standard business model. So they have money, of course, but they don't have budget for the IT investment. So they came to us as we are one of the UN group institutions. So they came to us and what should they do? And we proposed the idea that, okay, why don't you borrow the money from capital markets? And that person also said that I don't want to take the risk of a failure. So for UNICEF, if they made a IT investment for 50 million and they cannot achieve the target of the donation, that's a disaster for them. So they also want that risk to be taken by the private sector, someone else. And in the end, Dai-Ichi Life took that risk. So, and we issued half, UNICEF needed 50 million for the IT investment. And we issued the 50 million standard World Bank bond and put those two together. And the structure is that the 50%, half of the principal is protected by the AAA rating, by the credit by the World Bank. But half, investor may lose up to 50 million if the donation plan by UNICEF will fail.
I see.
So it's a huge risk. And I don't expect the Japanese life insurance conservative Japanese life insurance companies will take such kind. Did you buy that bond, by the way? So yeah, that's the normal way of thinking. But to my surprise, Dai-Ichi Life said, "Oh, I really want to buy this bond," and they bought the entire, almost the entire amount. Some small, tiny portion was placed to the investor in US, but yeah, that's a really. Yeah. So that's a good sign that the Dai-Ichi Life is really looking into the impact of the bond. Yeah. They want to show, of course, show their stakeholders how they contribute to the global society.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And by the way, what happens that after 6 months, UNICEF achieved the target. So the final maturities was 5 years, but UNICEF achieved the target in 6 months. So now it's a slightly higher financial income bond, World Bank bond, but without rating, because there's a risk of the principal. So the bond was not even rated AAA. So, but now it's a
Sogano-san,
good investment, right?
This is a typical win-win situation for both issuers and investors. And this is clear enough that the impact is clear. And when we invest, that is a good evidence for us to show how we contribute to the society. And of course, we have World Bank has the back with us, and the UNICEF is, of course, it is not when we compare with the any startup or any private investors, a private company which try to invest some new medical facilities, it's not totally comparable. Not comparable. It's UNICEF has a great confidence on that, so that we can take, in that sense, we can take a risk without any further considerations. But after all, it's all in all, it was an excellent idea, excellent results, and not only the issuer investors, but also for the UNICEF, and also for the beneficiary is the poor, the children's, or the poor people who has not provided the vaccine.
Right.
They are all the winners. So all we can have.
Very good. Very good.
Would you buy that?
Claudia.
Well, we are. I cannot comment on the specific investment
It's a
decision.
50 basis points over the standard World Bank bonds.
Wow, it's quite
But
impressive.
no credit rating.
But perhaps more in general, for us, the field of sustainability-linked bonds is very interesting because and I think it's also a great area of innovation where new concepts are being developed. And at the same time, we put great scrutiny on what is it actually linked to what extent is it credible, are there really clearly specified outcomes? So your point earlier about the green bond standard is an important one, having clearly identified or agreed standards in the market with ICMA. But then also for sustainability-linked bond, what we have done in order to help stimulate the market, because we're looking for those kind of investment opportunities, is to really be clear about what do we expect, what criteria have to be met, and what conditions have to be met. So, we would love to see more of those innovative approaches.
Yeah, Claudia, I think you're right. And especially talking about the bond issuance, there are we face sometimes that the problem that the impact is not sufficiently disclosed or explained to us. So that we encourage issuers who have not yet disclosed the impact to do so through the engagement. In some cases, issuers do not yet fully understand what kind of impact investors are required to disclose. So it is very important to convey the investors' perspectives.
Yeah, and that's where what Gavin mentioned earlier, the Global Investors for Sustainable Development Initiative, they have also produced such guidance to help advance it. And for us, it's really, if we don't understand it, we don't invest. It has to be clear, it has to be measurable. And otherwise, it's just because it's got a certain label of being sustainability linked, that doesn't, that is not sufficient.
Claudia, to pick up on this point, so you mentioned sustainability bonds. What are the certain asset classes, geographies, where you think SDG aligned investing can be most effective?
Interesting question, how you define most effective in
Meaningful.
most meaningful. So we would, the way we approach it in terms of our commitment to investing into the SDGs, it is global. So we also look, it's not limited to developing countries. It is also in developing markets where we do think that there are good investments. We do see it across all asset classes. Perhaps sometimes it is most tangible or most expressed in private markets, where we do infrastructure or real estate investments. But then also in capital markets, you can find investments or companies that through their products and services, so through their core business, do make a tangible contribution to addressing the sustainability challenges.
Great, very good. So if I may, moving to policy and regulation, you're seeing adopted in more and more regions. How do you think policy and regulation can better support this agenda?
Are you expecting Fu to answer the question?
Please.
Oh. Okay, so World Bank is a little bit, complicated to fully answer such kind of political questions. But however, my relatively personal view is that the current situation reminds me of what happened to the Kyoto Protocol in early 90s. Yeah, that system is so perfect, and we expect the certified emission reduction market will expand, but it didn't happen. So I think the requirements and the rules are too strict and too perfect for the certified emission reduction. That is one reason why it didn't go well. So if the regulation for the social bond or green bond or whatever is too tight, I worry a similar situation may happen. So I hope, of course, rules, clear guidelines are important, but I hope the authorities will be flexible to change accordingly based on the movement and development of the market and demand. So that's all I can say.
Okay, thank you.
To be honest.
Sogano-san, Claudia, anything on policy and regulation?
Maybe answering to your questions, I'd better tell you that I was in the public sector for 32 years before joining Dai-Ichi Life. So my answer might be a little bit biased towards the public sector. So based on that, considering about the regulations, maybe we often hear that there are too strict restrictions over the infrastructure or investment. And those criticisms are coming from the for example, Basel III or some regulations concerning the capital requirement over on the insurance sectors and etc. But the regulators may think about the more emphasis on the stability of the financial markets, so that in that sense, I understand the problems rises. However, the regulator may also think about how to enhance such a long-term investment, especially we need so much amount of infrastructure for not only the developed countries, but also for the developing emerging economies. So that we should take a real balance between those two elements. One for to how to enhance such a long-term investment. On the other hand, at the same time, we should have some stabilized market situations. So we should take balance.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, so I would agree with that. Investment plans that are focusing on infrastructure, or like you have in the EU on with very clear climate and green objectives, they will help drive investments. But then also in the since you were asking about regulation, in the EU you have the SFDR, the Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulation, and within that there are many aspects to it, but there's a focus on looking at the environmental and social objectives of investments. And that sort of, I believe, has a stronger focus away from just conduct. How does a company operate to what it does? And this what, I think, is much more closely linked to outcomes and solutions. And I think what was perhaps implicit in your question is also the link to governments, right? To how can you work with policymakers, but also how can we as investors partner with governments, and they may be our local governments, in driving solutions. In the Netherlands, you see quite a strong collaboration between funds to help drive renewable energy capacity where projects are being developed.
Right.
So I think it's also that sort of collaboration where one can use the power positively.
Yeah, public policy engagement. Very interesting.
Maybe
Please.
Should I add that if I talk about for example, some policy objective to enhance such an SDGs investment, at the very early stage we have lots of policies which varies according to the country's needs.
Yeah.
But now we are. And I think it's my personal idea, but we are now entering into a bit different stage more not matured enough, but at a bit more advanced stage that we need some more harmonization of such policies. For example, just considering the taxonomy, or there are so many taxonomies according to in the various areas. So sometimes we confuse how we should this might be good enough for this country, this must be good enough for this country. We have to check in the various way, so that we may need some policy coordination or policy harmonization in light of, in the sense of the, for example, in the taxonomy or that.
Great point. Great point. Shifting gears, we're all aware of the ESG backlash playing out in the U.S. How do we distinguish ESG investing from SD investing? And do similar fiduciary arguments or considerations apply? Who would like to take a shot at that?
As you know, that nowadays the position of the chief sustainability officer is a very dangerous and unpopular because I'm always criticized by both parties, both sides. One from the pro ESG and one from the con ESGs. So it is very difficult to answer these questions. But I can simply say that the regardless of the ESG label, it is important for investors to judge whether or not to invest based on their own values and whether or not it will benefit SDGs without being distracted by any political movements. So it is important to check whether it is truly consistent with the SDGs objectives. That's my opinion.
Okay. All right. Fiduciary duty.
Yeah, and I think it's also, remind oneself of what one's reason is, why one exists. And in the end, our mission is to provide affordable pensions to the 4.5 million Dutch people whom we serve, so that they can retire into a sustainable world. So, and I think we are not charitable. It is about meeting risk return requirements as much as it is about making the positive contribution. And to that, I wouldn't think that there would be a contradiction necessarily if one sets up one's investment process accordingly.
Okay. Claudia, can you talk about the difference between companies that are effectively selling into the SDGs and those that have SDG commitments in terms of their operations and strategies?
That are companies that are selling into the SDGs.
In other words, their products and services relate to specific SDG goals, water and sanitation, et cetera, versus a company that has a global compact commitment to the SDGs.
Yeah. So I think because that was probably the question around ESG investing, and this alphabet soup of all the different terms. Environmental, social, and governance factors can be integrated into many ways in the investment process, and it differs by asset class that you choose. But it is often about the how. How does a company conduct itself or an investment? So the operations, the operational improvements, etc. Whereas if you have a focus on the products and services, it is more about the business model, the what the company does. And I think this strategy is quite the sort of strategic focus is quite important. And what we've been doing with our asset owner platform to look at the now, what is the alignment? And then based on your patterns linked to products, linked to technology and process. So where do your R&D dollars go? Is a company strategically aligned with the SDGs? Does that reflect the way forward that it could seize the investment and the business opportunities that arise from the big sustainability trends and challenges?
Great points. Great points. We're nicely on time for audience Q&A. Who would like to be brave enough to pose questions? I think we've got a roving mic, and if you could introduce yourself and your affiliation, that would be wonderful. You can direct to one or all panelists, please.
James Lockhart-Smith, Verisk Maplecroft. We focus on geospatial ESG and sustainability. Just Claudia, the last point. I understand the relevance of products and services, but why do we not also think about capital allocation into different emerging markets by companies. So in other words, just not what they're selling, but where they are investing, because FDI and operations makes a huge difference in terms of the development potential and trajectory of various countries. So just my view is we don't hear enough about that, and I'm sort of wondering why.
Yeah, it is not to the exclusion of. So it's a very valid point that where they're operating has to be considered as well. So it is not exclusive.
Right. Great. Please, hand in the back, if you could introduce yourself. Thank you.
Hi, Annie Major from Investing in Women, an Australian government-funded program catalysing gender lens investing in Southeast Asia, particularly in Indonesia, Philippines and Vietnam. So to that question that was just asked, quite focused. I'm interested to hear from your organisations about how you consider SDG 5 in particular around gender equality and how you approach this, and also what you're hearing from the industry in terms of how this is perceived or viewed as a social issue or as a commercial imperative. And yes, that's a loaded question. Thanks.
Thank you for the loaded question. To all panelists, I think.
Yeah. Okay, let me start. For the gender equality, it is very important topic among the SDGs, and also I mentioned at the very beginning of my speech that I mentioned that the importance of the stewardship, and on that respect, we check when we invest, we check the company's gender diversity, and also whether this company has enough percentage of females workers or females directors engaged, and we also have some dialogue how to increase how the management team will like to increase the proportionality of these figures, and in that during the engagement we are influencing the investees to enhance such an agenda equality.
Can I?
Please. Yeah.
Yes, as a World Bank, of course, gender is a really important theme we have been tackling. But before I start, I would like to tell that my immediate boss is the women, and the CFO is women, and I served 3 treasurer and vice presidents in my career, women, and what is important is that of course we finance many gender issue tackling projects in the developing countries. But we take a holistic approach. So, like I mentioned in the climate, mainstreaming climate, we also try to make the gender include in every project finance we newly introduce. So that's how we tackle the issue. And I'm sure at the World Bank, the management in the women is, I feel, much stronger than guys, to be honest.
Okay. Thank you.
Good. Yeah, I don't have a lot to add other than I think it's a multi-layered process of, that you use your stewardship, your voting power, etc., to address questions around diversity and inclusion as well.
Right. Gentlemen. Mike, yeah.
Thank you, very insightful. This is Wolfgang from Seviora. You spoke quite a bit about funding individual approaches, instruments, things of that nature. My question is, if you look at portfolios, how do you talk about SDGs and SDG outcomes on a portfolio level? So when you have to roll it up potentially across asset classes.
Yeah.
Great question.
Yeah, I can give a very, very concretely. So what we do is we disclose in our annual responsible investment report how much we have invested into the SDGs, to our definition of SDIs. So that is then by how much and to which SDG does it contribute, and then we provide examples of what qualifies under that, and that is across private and public markets. And as I said, we are, conservative in terms of outcomes. That I think an impact measurement, that is something that we all still try to define concretely, even though I hear that quite a few parties already have an impact measurement framework. So we define it as the positive contribution that we have made. And with our asset owner collaboration, we are actually taking that next step of going to output and outcomes, because that's where we believe it should be going. And from ourselves as well.
Yeah, I think I understand. The questionnaire has already an answer that it is very difficult to define what's the real results of the SDGs investment. But we should have some so-called PDCA cycle, so that when we start investment, we analyze the investees companies, how the SDGs would go on, and how when we invest our money, how these investees would change their behavior. And we analyze, we check, and we verify the results, and we consider once again this company is investable or not. And so all these cycles are continuing. And through this process, maybe the company and whole society may grow up with towards the SDGs goals. So it's my a little bit vague answer. Sorry to my vague answer, but for my vague answer, but it's the only answer I can say.
Can I?
Yeah, please.
Just a little one thing is that as a borrower, we issue the annual impact report. Try to do that as soon as possible after our financial reports is published. So, but we are still in a process to develop what we should disclose in an impact report, and we really appreciate if we get inputs from all of you here. To develop the standard of how borrowers should announce the impact report.
Thank you for that invitation. Clarifying point, I think, and then two questions.
Claudia, and if I understand you correctly, you're reporting, or measuring and reporting dollars deployed tagged to SDGs, and you're working on how to measure outcomes. Is that correct?
Exactly. We would not claim that we measure outcomes yet. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Question.
But this is not, sorry, just to clarify, this is a fairly black and white how I've presented it. We also have some very concrete examples of where outcomes have been achieved, and we report on that. But that is not at a sort of systematically aggregated level across the entire portfolio. Yeah.
Great, thanks. Question in the aisle, and then gentleman in the front. Yep. Please. Microphone, middle aisle. Thank you. It's on its way. Can you raise your hand? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. My name's Carly Hammond. I'm from New Forests. We're a global asset manager focused on forestry and land use. I mean, I'm just interested in hearing from you all. I think in recent years, we've seen the rise of SDG washing, I guess, as a subset of greenwashing, and where managers are really just aligning their portfolios and matching their existing work to the SDGs. And I think that really does sell the SDGs short and doesn't really help the overall ambition. So I'm just interested and what advice you have of bringing that rigor back into connecting with the SDGs, and specifically the targets that sit and the indicators that sit underneath those.
Rainbow washing, I think it's called, unfortunately. Which of you would like to respond?
Shall I start?
Please.
Yeah, you're right. Now we are talking about all about the greenwashing, but those criticisms comes from the misconcept or the no clear definition. That's because of the no clear definition of the the greens, and also no clear definition of the transition finance, or such a concept is still not yet clear. And because we try to invest our money for the transition finance, but even for the just simply saying the transition finance, we are now working under the framework of the G Funds, Glasgow Financial Asset Alliance Network, how to define the clear definition of transition finance. But still, inside the financial institutions, there are so many discussions and so much debate, and what would be the so-called, what would be the real transition finance? So without having a clear definition, some say this is green, this is another say this is greenwash. So it's very, very difficult to define which is what. But it is a kind of a phenomenon emerging in the very early phase. So when we do some when we try to when we continue to, having such a work, maybe we can have more clearer definition, and then that'll be solved in the future. I really hope so.
Anyone else?
I can perhaps add. So I share your concern about the credibility, and we don't rely on anyone else's disclosures or declarations of SDG alignment, SDG contribution, but it is about our own assessment of doing that. So the scrutiny that we apply, and I may sound like a broken record, but therefore I believe that if we collaborate to advance our understanding and thinking and being able to provide guidance in what we consider SDG aligned, that's the way to go. It's dynamic as well as a concept.
Great point. Gentleman in the front, please.
Thank you very much. I represent Matter, a data analytics provider. My question is on the topic of beyond 2030. We're halfway through the SDG period now. A lot of the other international frameworks are set at 2030. So if we look beyond 2030, the SDGs have, of course, been very, very important in devising one language or one framework for sustainable development over the last 7.5 years. But if you were, as representatives of some of the largest financial institutions on the planet, were to think of what does a catalytic framework for sustainable investing look like beyond 2030, what would you hope for, not what you expect, what would you hope for the UN and other international organizations to come up with beyond 2030?
Right. I'm no longer a UN official, so I will demur. But perhaps, Arima-san, you have some views on
yes,
post 2030?
So, before the UN introduced SDGs, there was, of course, the goals, but no one actually knew that. But I think UN did a really good job by simply make it simple with the 17 logos. It's I don't know about any plan beyond 2030, but reviewing what we have done in the capital markets, I believe the similar concept will be continued, but the focus should be, of course, different. And in fact, the World Bank and the stakeholders, the shareholder governments agreed that in order to achieve the SDGs, in addition to the two goals of the World Bank Group, end poverty and share prosperity, we need to focus on inclusive and sustainable growth, human capital, and resilience. Yeah, so those are, in my personal opinion, is that those three should be focused more. And in fact, in fact, the disaster risk management, for example, is getting the more and more important. And even the World Bank started providing the insurance to developing countries by ourselves. We do that by issuing the cat bonds.
Right.
So we never we never expect such kind of change in the past.
Yeah.
So I think based on what will happen to the planet, what we need to focus should change.
I think the good money is betting on an extension of the SDGs. We'll see. Please.
Thank you very much. Margarita Pirovska, PRI's Director of Policy. So first I wanted to note that we can continue this interesting conversation at session 5E, where we would invite everyone to share their views on sustainability outcomes. But I have a question rebounding on the question from my colleague earlier on SDG washing. What type of policy or regulatory tool, such as a taxonomy, for example, would help you make better investment decisions on what is aligned with sustainability goals versus what is not? As a policy person, I'm really interested by your views. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Panelists?
This is a question for investors, right?
This
is how I escape from typical,
Claudia, the
complicated
classification.
question. But one thing I would like to mention to everybody is that on the impact report, we are trying to introduce SDG mapping for our entire projects and try to map the individual projects in a SDG framework. So that would be, we hope that will be useful for everybody to set up the rules and guidelines. So that's all. And
and I think,
over to you.
I can build on your point. I think there are a lot of I would call this a market-led initiative, and they have been quite catalytic in driving more investments. And what I was trying to say earlier, particularly in Europe, that's probably what I'm most familiar with, they're already inherently SDG-related aspects in sustainable finance regulation. So I'm not sure that more regulation is the panacea here, but harnessing harnessing the market in terms of standard setting, because we really want that and we really need it, and it is dynamic. That's what we need to capture as well. That's perhaps not the answer you were looking for, but and in the end, it is about investors. They can make those choices, and they can find these investment opportunities if they're also clear enough to the market. We really want these, and please structure them for us. So we've made a really quite an innovative investment in emerging market debt, so ILX. That is because we went out there wanting to do it, and that everyone is in a position, or many investors are in a position to do so, and that will help accelerate the capital allocation.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah, in my personal opinion, there is no concrete regulation in the world, so don't expect that. And if the regulators try to have very precise to make a very precise definition of greenwash, and try to regulate, implement the regulations, the financial industries, or not only the financial industry, but all the market participants may try to create some leeway. So there is no 100% solution for that. Mm-hmm. So don't expect for don't expect the regulation for the 100%. Mm-hmm. But still, as having said that, we should have some the relevant balance between some regulated aspect and non-regulated market-based or market-oriented based aspects of the. We may take some balance to make a nice free behavior of the participants.
Yeah, very heavy statements from my ex-BOJ official.
We have time for maybe one more question. Anyone else from the audience? I see some old friends I can start calling on if I have to. Please, in the front.
Thank you, everyone. I'm Chen from UziVest. We are a data solution provider in China. So as all the discussions has been going on, it seems pretty difficult to quantify what we have been doing in the SDG goals. So as a data provider, we are thinking like, what kind of data solutions do you think can better help you assist your goals in the SDG or ESG investing? Thank you.
Again, that's a question for investors. But one thing I would like to note here is that
he's very good at
requested by GPIF. We worked together with the GPIF to put to establish the website to disclose the ESG related data for what's going on in the developing countries. So that, do you know about that website? Oh, okay. So those kind of activities should be. We hope it's useful for everybody. So.
Yeah, no, I think in general, we as I think all investors, we find that we have to invest a lot more in data, data infrastructure, data analytics. And that's what we've been as part of innovation, but it's also part of just being able to run your day-to-day investment strategy. So what we do find is that we would buy data from research providers, that we would seek geospatial data, that we go increasingly to asset-specific data, that we source more public source data, all of that, and that we then combine it and do our own analytics over it. So, the data we would seek data that is fairly broad and global in coverage, but then we would also really seek very specific data. Data specific to China's location, China's investments is, of course, very important. So it's a variety of sources, and increasingly we have quite a strong focus on AI-driven analysis to help us with it.
Wonderful. We're coming to the end. Did anyone else want to the end of our session? Please join me in thanking our panelists and to you, the audience. Thank you very much for your attention.